Yo, JB in the house. So we left off in episode 1. I was talking about Bubbles the bastard chimp. Michael Jackson's chimpanzee that came on the road with us came to Japan, and I think he came to at least one or two cities in America when we did the Bad Tour, 1987, 1988. Ended up in 1989. That was a long-ass time for a tour. But there was enough fans to fill the stadiums everywhere we went. Well, Bubbles came to the show one day, and we were hanging out backstage, and the trainer asked him what he thought of Michael Jackson's music, and he went like this. Awesome! And, I love Michael Jackson's music. It was only awesome because it was damn funny. And then he asked him to dance, and the chimpanzee did the moonwalk. Kinda. He walked backwards. How cool is that? Have a chimp on the road with you. And I remember on that same tour, George Lynch was in Japan with Batten at the time. And he came to one of the shows, and we were hanging out and talking backstage. And he said, man, it must be so cool to be on a tour of this magnitude. And I was kind of shocked, and I thought, well, you're in a big band. But really, when you take a bird's eye view, there was nothing like the Michael Jackson show. With dancers, pyrotechnics. He spent $1 million just on clothing for the people on stage. All right? $1 million. Just poof, gone before you even play one note. And the clothing was kind of interesting. I'll tell you what, breaker, come back good, buddy. Sheryl Crow was on that tour, and they made a fairy costume for her, and she had wings. And Frank DeLeo, the manager, the cigar-toting manager, put an end to that. We will not have fairy wings on stage. There was some interesting stuff in the beginning, including my costume, which we all got 3 costumes so that they could be changed out and cleaned. And I had a couple that were tiger-based, and I had a one-piece suit that had tiger stripes. It was black and yellow, and all of the black had these tiny beads sewn in them. There must have been 1 million. And in the beginning, that was okay, but as time wore on, the beads were heavy, so the costume was always sinking, and I always had to yank it back up. That sucked. I had another one that I had tiger stripe pants, and they had fur going down the back of the leg. I mean, the detail was just insane. There was a few mishaps. All the dancers split out of their pants because although the pants looked amazing, they were not meant for exercise and stretching and doing monstrous moves. And one after another, they would split. So there had to be modifications made, and I believe they put elastic bands down the legs so they had some room for movement. Speaking of splitting out of your pants, poor John Clark, the other guitar player on the Bad Tour, good friend of mine, his pants split too. And that was during working day or night. I think we were in Australia. And there's one part of the song where we had to freeze. And wherever we were on the stage, we had to strike a pose and freeze until we got a cue to start moving again. And one night, John hit that freeze with his legs wide open and split right down the crotch for 50, 60,000 people to see. Oopsie! As I recall, the dancers only had problems at rehearsal of things breaking. But this was a real live show. There ain't no rewind. Everything we did on those big shows, there were at least 3 or 4 cameramen on stage at all times, projecting onto the big screen jumbotrons. So the people at the back, normally would look about that big if you're in the back of a stadium with 50, 60,000 people. But with the jumbotrons, you could see details in every one. I did have one costume mishap that I think that was on the history tour, where for the bad and the dangerous tours, which was 87, 88, and then 92, there was a lot of work put into my hair, with the wefts sewn into these braids that I had thin braids, so this extra hair would be sewn in, and every 6 weeks I'd have to get my hair bleached again, and it became painful. These things were hanging off my braids, and I would get sores on my head. So Karen Faye, the hair and makeup artist, had to redo the braids and put them in different parts of the head. But I tell you what, the paycheck was worth it. So this one time, okay, in Beat It, on the history tour, every time we did Beat It, all 3 tours, I was wearing completely different things. He wanted everything fresh every time. So I was running out to do my solo, and at the end of Beat It, everybody would be on stage running around in this chaotic kind of Beat It vibe. And on the history tour, I had, instead of all that hair work, let's just say that look was interesting. It was not my favorite of all 3 tours. I had a leather headdress and there was a wig attached to it. So to get ready, instead of 2.5 hours, it's like, slam the wig on, you're good to go. But I had this piece of leather that went across my nose and a piece of leather that went under here. And I was attached to this long fiber optic cable. And one night, as I was running around and everybody was running in circles, somebody stepped on my cable and it gave me whiplash. I was not pleased. I know, sirree, I was less than pleased with that. Okay, so this one time, okay, I had a guitar just for the end of Beat It that was not playable. It was just for show, and it would explode and shoot fire and shoot smoke. And I think I might have had the same guitar for the bad tour and the dangerous tour, but on the history tour, Michael wanted me to strike more of a macho pose. Normally, I would take the guitar, and there was a handle in the back. I would get down on one knee, and there was a trigger next to the handle, so I could shoot smoke out the front of it, and then there was another trigger where fire would shoot out the headstock. And he wanted me to look more macho, so a new guitar had to be designed by Bob Hood, the pyro guy. And there was so much going on in my life before we took off for the history tour. My mother was very ill. I was trying to finish a record. I was trying to do rehearsals, and I was not sleeping enough. So needless to say, I did not follow directions properly. And Bob was trying to show me what the new guitar would look like and how it would be triggered. And the last thing he said is, but it's not going to be ready for today's rehearsal. And in my head, I'm going, okay, new guitar, new trigger. So I went out to do the Beat It solo, and I triggered the old guitar in the new way and ended up with a 2nd-degree burn on my wrist. Ouch. Didn't want to go to the hospital. I probably should have. But there was somebody from the fire department was there. Anyway, probably because of the pyro that would be shot. Because every city we went to, the local firemen, somebody from the fire station had to see a couple of samples of the explosives just to make sure that it was kosher and within code for that area. And the guy from the fire department, we all thought, let's put ice on it. And he said the new way of treating a burn like that was to put your hand just in cold water. So I did that for quite a while. Then I went out for dinner with some folks afterwards, and it was starting to hurt. Apparently what was happening is my skin was still cooking. And I never did go to the hospital. My dad is a doctor, so that was handy. In a couple of days after that accident, I was hanging out with my dad at his house, and he had a look at it and said, you need to go in. It was starting to get infected. And so I went in, and they probably gave me some kind of drugs and also a topical antibiotic, and I had an allergic reaction to that and broke out in hives head to toe. But in the end, Michael's response to me getting a second-degree burn was, "She's not going to want to do that again, is she?" I did. I was a trooper back then.